folks. This is Steven with the Positive Identity Podcast series. And Ron, we have a really amazing guest today who's going to talk to us about some very fascinating stuff. But you want to jump in a little bit? How you met this guy and all that?
I am extraordinarily excited for this interview. We met about 2 weeks ago, and we had a chance to kind of briefly talk about what he, I told him I was a stand-up comedian. He told me he was running into a lot of stand-up comedians. I asked him why, and he told me who he is and what he does in his book. So I am going to, I know you have his bio right there.
Yeah, the bio right here.
Yeah. So he's from Boston. You're from Boston. I'm from Philadelphia.
No, I'm from upstate New York.
I'm sorry,
we're a New Yorker. Yeah.
New York.
So our New York friend, we're bringing on people from New York. Ori here is the Accidental Gangster.
Yes.
And when Ori and Ron spoke, and again, our podcast series about creating positive race relations, seeing the good in people, positive stories, working together to create unity. There's some stuff that Ori and Ron were talking about that were really interesting. And so, Ori, I want to jump right in, give you the intro, and then say hi to you. So, Orlando Ori Spado was born December 17th, 1944, in Rome, New York, where he attended high school at Rome Free Academy. At the age of 18, Ori joined the U.S. Army and served his country proudly, and was discharged honorably in 1966. He returned to Rome and had various jobs until he sold insurance for the Prudential Insurance Company, where he was a leading agent. After his first marriage and 3 children, Ori moved to San Francisco, where he married his second wife, and then after another divorce, he moved to Beverly Hills, California, where he became known as a Hollywood fixer, doing favors for A-list celebrities and others. People referred to him as the Hollywood mob boss. In 2008, he was arrested at his home in Beverly Hills and brought to Brooklyn on Colombo crime family RICO indictment. He has enjoyed a friendship with the legendary underboss, Sonny Franzises of the Colombo family, if I mispronounce it, let me know, for over 40 years and remains friends to this day. In addition, he has known the bosses of several Mafia families throughout the U.S., having known Frank Costello, Mayor Lansky, Russell Buffalino, Carlo Mancello, and Joey Pyle from London. Ori finished his time at the U.S. Federal Prison in Lompoc and returned to Beverly Hills, where he is involved in a few film projects and other legitimate businesses. This is the true story of his life. He lived it. He owns it and takes full responsibility for his actions of the past. Ori hopes that with releasing his book, that if it can keep just one person from entering the life of crime, it was well worth it. Ori, it's a pleasure to meet you.
My pleasure.
Absolutely.
So
I'd like just to show you. This is the cover of my book. It's on Amazon now. It's been released.
Mm-hmm.
Or they can get autographed copies at my website, www.theaccidentalgangster.com.
Sounds good. Check out the book. It is really fascinating. I know Ron got his hands on it recently himself, and we'll let you jump in with that soon. So we had, I gave you the intro. Ori, in like 10 minutes, how did you become this person? And sort of explain how do you accidentally become, a gangster? What was this thing that made you who you are?
Well, was it an accident or was it just my future?
Right.
We're all destined for something in this world. And sometimes things happen unknowingly and we don't even know they're happening. But what actually happened was my first indictment was in Syracuse, New York, federal court. And I'd lost my insurance. They took my insurance license away from me. Had no means making the money. But during that period of time, I was close friend with a lawyer named Frank Russo. His father used to be the boss in upstate New York, and my grandfather was with him. And unbeknownst to me, I guess Frank Russo was actually grooming me because he's the one who introduced me to everybody throughout the country. And And a lot of people who are alive are still my friends. Sonny Franchese, by the way, he just passed away a few months ago at the age of 103.
Wow.
And in my book, at the end of my book, there are several letters that I've written to several different people. And some are deceased, some are alive. But there is a letter to Sonny Franchese in there that I wrote to him as though he were alive. As well as several other letters that you folks would be of great interest to you. And I included the U.S. House of Representatives in there.
Right on.
Gotcha.
When you were writing these letters, what was going through your mind? Was it to make amends? Was it more of a catharsis?
No, not to make amends. I had nothing to make amends for. It was memories of our conversations. I do not tell them what our conversations were.
Right.
Sonny and I had a lot of private conversations. No, just a letter that I felt like, tomorrow's my birthday. I'll be 76 years old.
Congratulations.
So,
Happy birthday.
from all my life, all my friends were older than me. And now here I am at 76. Most of my friends are deceased. But I think about them all every day.
Right.
And it's just something that don't go away. And so I just felt, actually my publisher came up with the idea, write letters. I wrote letters. Yeah. And I really got into it, and some people will be happy with them, and maybe some won't. That's life.
How when did you realize that you were being groomed, to enter the mob? And when was that moment? What was that? When and how did you take that?
I just accepted it. How it happened was, you got to remember, in upstate New York, whenever anybody needed anything or had a problem, Frank Russo was the guy to go to. Then finally, I was getting calls and people were saying, Frank Russo told me to call you. I go, what?
Oh, man.
And I called Frank. I said, what the hell are you doing? He said, let the people call you now. You take care of all these people. And that's how it began.
Wow.
And I accepted the role.
Was there a value that started to draw you in, that you were valued and they wanted you to do this, and so you thought you got self-worth from it, and that kind of pulled you further into it?
No, you got to remember, I'm not one of those guys who were born in Brooklyn, brought up in it, from a young kid and all that there. No, it was something that came very natural to me. If something don't come natural and don't come easy to you, then don't do it. Right. And it was just something that I fell into. And one thing that, people don't realize, we have a saying in the life that you're always for the underdog. And to this day, I still help the underdog. There's a lot of people that have problems. They just don't know where to go, how to do, who to talk to, or what. And, if I could handle the problem, I most certainly would.
What percentage of guys who came up like you did, how many of them just did it? How many of them were accidentally being pulled into, as you sort of say, and it's just they knew no other way?
There's a saying in life, there are no accidents.
Right.
There are no accidents.
You know, Ori, I was, you know, as I was mentioning, I'm from Philadelphia, and back when I was a kid, if I'm remembering this correctly, it was explained to me, correct, I'm actually, I guess this is more of a question to make sure this is correct. It was explained to me that the mafia really kind of got its start in the United States because of the discrimination that Italians were experiencing here, and so it became a community, a way of elevating the entire community and protecting the community, things along that line. Is that accurate?
It's fairly accurate. Let me tell you the whole story of the origination. My understanding, you know, for those of you who don't know, Italy was one of the most invaded countries ever.
Yeah.
And Sicily was invaded and taken over by the French in the 1800s. Mm-hmm. And on Sunday mornings, you know, the wives would be out in the park with their children and so forth. And the French guards started raping the woman. So the men got together and said, we got to do something about this.
Right.
And it just spread right through Italy. And, you know, in different regions in Italy are different organizations. You know, everybody knows the Sicilians. I'm from Calabria. Mm-hmm. Calabria is called the Ndrangheta. Okay, and Naples is the Gomorrah. So there's different parts. And then when we came to this country, it was the same thing, taking care of our own. We never bothered outside people. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you a story. My father worked at Revere Copper and Brass. Mm-hmm. After he was dead, after he died, I was in the insurance business with a Prudential. And one day I picked this one street and I started knocking on doors. And I knock on this one door and an older black man opened the door. And he looked right at me. Before I said a word, he says, "You're Joe Spado's son." Yeah, how do you know that? He said, "You look like them." I said, "Well, I'm here. I'm with the Prudential Insurance." "Come on in," he said. He brings me in. He gives me a cup of coffee. He said, "Listen, I don't need any insurance." He said, "But I got to talk to you." He said, "Your father was one of the best men. I worked side by side with him for 35 years. And then he got into discussion, you know, and this came up yesterday. Somebody called me. You would think Rome, New York is all Italian, correct?
Rome, New York sounds very Italian.
Very Italian. But there was, and this gentleman told me, and this was another black man. He looked, he showed me pictures of his son and daughter, of which he put them both through college. One was a lawyer, the other was a doctor, both in California, by the way. Mm. And he says, the blacks, they got nothing to complain about. Nobody had it worse than you Italians. Mm. And he says, I remember the day you guys were not allowed to go west of the Mohawk River. There's a bridge on Dominic Street. Mm-hmm. And we were not allowed to go on the other side of that bridge. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we each and we all have been discriminated in some way. Mm-hmm. The Italians definitely, the blacks absolutely, for different reasons. Mm-hmm. You know, we were called guineas, we were called wops. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my father heard somebody say guinea or wop. He put him right in a hospital. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Part of me appreciates that. Part of me is like, oh, but no, that's wrong. You know, so.
Yeah. No,
but everybody appreciates it. Yeah.
It's interesting what you're saying, Ori, because again, when, you know, I was born and raised in West Philadelphia, and, you know, right next door is South Philadelphia, which is, you know, predominantly Italian. And so, you know, that's where I started getting my understanding and experience with Italian. As a matter of fact, it was an Italian grandmom who taught me how to make my pasta sauce from scratch. Oh yeah, oh yeah. She's like, she because you know, I was I was always curious with the Italian culture. It seemed, you're saying Guinea and everything like this, my mother's Jamaican, and we saw the Italian families as so identical to ours. I mean, besides the skin color, the closeness, the cooking, the expressiveness, the protection over your family, we just really identified with that, the loyalty, the integrity that is within the community. And it wasn't really being experienced much in the greater Black community at that time. There was a lot of gun violence and such in Philadelphia. Yeah. And so I would go over for the holidays over to some of my friends' house, and as Italian grandmother, I always kept watching how they're making cannoli and how they're making their pasta. She goes, what makes a good pasta sauce? It's emotion.
Yeah.
And
somebody asked me, you should write a cookbook. I said, I always learned to cook, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. How am I going to write recipes? A little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's going to be a one-page book.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But it's interesting, because, this our podcast is about positive race identity. And it was those families, and through hearing their conversations about how even in the 70s and 80s, Italians in Philadelphia were being discriminated against. We had an Italian mayor, Frank Rizzo. Right. And it was just, I found as much as there was competition with petty drug dealing and things like this, there was also major understanding and commonality in that. And, what was your experience when you were coming up, with racism in America and all that?
I can be honest with you. We had Blacks in Rome, New York, of course. Mm-hmm. They lived in a certain area, but we all got along.
Yeah.
I remember one Black gangster. His name was Milton Searcy. He was a sharp dresser, always had a knife with him. He became one of my best friends. So I never really experienced racism. Didn't even know what the hell it was. You know what I mean? Until I joined the Army. And when I was in the Army, I was stationed in Augusta, Georgia. Airborne basic training. And my bunkie on top of me was a Black boy, Armstrong.
Right.
Nicest kid you ever want to meet. And he was a sharp soldier, good kid. Of course, there were fights. There was one Black boy out of Washington, D.C. He and I fought every night. I defended the Blacks. I defended everybody.
Yeah.
But the thing that I experienced is still think of today, and nothing has changed for the Blacks in that state, as far as I know of, the state's Georgia.
Yeah.
In the 7th week of basic training, our CO allowed us a 4-hour pass, that's all, to go into town and have dinner. So 4 of us guys got together and we brought Armstrong with us. We're all dressed in our uniforms. And we walked into Augusta, Georgia, and we picked a restaurant, and we go to the door. He said, "Need a table." And the guy says, "He can't come in." And I look and go, "What do you mean?" He pointed Armstrong. I said, "Why can't he come in?" He says, "The colored are not permitted. They got to go in that other door." And I said, "Hold up there," I said. "Look at that guy's uniform." I said, "No fucking different mine or any of us. And you're telling me this guy is willing to go out and defend this fucking country, but you're not going to allow in your fucking restaurant in this door?" I said, "He's with us. I want him to sit with us."
Wow.
And it turned out the way the restaurant was divided was with ropes. And in the center of it, there was a booth, and the ropes ran right through the center of that table.
Oh, my God.
So,
they're really committed.
I mean, Armstrong had to go in the other door, but he was still at their table with freaking ropes.
Wow.
Okay, but he was still with us.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, and it's unfortunate that we live in a country where people are still thinking like that. I watch the news, I get disgusted.
Yeah.
You know, you can't watch. You know, I remember late night shows with Jack Parr, Johnny Carson, Jay Leno.
Oh yeah.
I love Jay Leno. I'm a big Jay Leno fan.
Okay, you used to be able to watch those shows, laugh, enjoy them. They had good guests. They drove. You can't do it today.
Yeah.
These people, these comics have become newscasters.
Yeah.
Or, and I don't even call them newscasters. I call them pundits. You know, it's like the 3 cable networks. You don't have no newscasters there. You got pundits. You got people giving their opinion. Right. And here you are. You have the American people looking at, and they pick one station over another, and that's how they start thinking.
Yeah. You raise a really good point. It's interesting because, you know, the next question I wanted to ask you was, so and I'll just tie this in. So you come to Beverly Hills and you start becoming this Hollywood fixer. What started that? And, you know, how were you working with the studios? What did that look like in the beginning?
Once again, all right, it just happened. I was close friends with Dino De Laurentiis and Ralph Serpi, particularly Ralph Serpi. And, you know, Dino was a big producer. And then they have an issue, and, you know, I was friends. They asked me to take care of it, and I take care of it. And, you know, things just came talking to people, making people understand the difference between right and wrong, came naturally to me. And, you know, went from them to the studios to agents and actors and actresses and so forth. But it was just something, and, you know, I did it. It was simple. I got to be honest, for me, it was easy. Because I could talk. I got a theory of life. If I had to go into a meeting and I'm there more than 15 minutes, then I didn't get across what I needed to get across. And I said, so I do what I got to do, and I'm very good verbally and how I say things and how I look when I say them.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's no accident. I'm sure she took a little bit of work on that skill right there. I mean, you know, I'm going to get to something in a second to sort of tie this thing together. The way you think about people, you must have some philosophies. And what I'm trying to sort of get at is that you've made some decisions over time about life and outlooks. And we'll connect this to the Armstrong story in a second. What are some philosophies that you have about life?
Do the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
And that's a choice. That's not something you just sort of fall into. I mean, you know, the time with Armstrong, you know, so the irony is that you come on as the accidental gangster and you're like, oh, this guy did all these terrible things, you know. But one of the first things you want to lead off with was that clearly it would have been easy to just tell the guy, hey, go eat somewhere else. We're going to do our thing. Less to deal with, less controversy. Yet you made some choices then that pushed it forward. And you talk about you fall into stuff. How much of that was maybe some of the military background, being like, you know, as you kind of mentioned that already, but we're fighting for the same country.
Military, and one thing that I regret that our country has done was they did away with the draft. Although I enlisted, but we had a draft at that time.
Right.
And I believe if we still had the draft, you'd have less crime on the streets today and you'd have more men on the streets because you learn respect, honor, and loyalty in the service. You learn how to make your bunk. You learn responsibility. You learn dedication. Our children don't have that today, and
Right.
they're not getting it from their parents.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm doing a thing about the Constitution of the United States.
Right.
Okay? How many people have ever read the Constitution? Have you read it?
I have. I actually have that same book as you that you just flashed.
You do.
Yeah.
And I haven't read it. I haven't read it since high school, admittedly.
Okay, you're lucky that you taught it in high school. I don't think they teach it today.
Mm-hmm.
They really don't. It's interesting how that works. They don't really teach it.
But what it says and how it begins is we, the minority, to protect the majority. I'm not protect. We, the minority, to protect ourselves again from the majority. The minority was landowners. We had 13 states. I think it was written 235 years ago. All those guys who wrote it are dead. Those guys didn't even know what the hell a light bulb was because we had no light bulbs. We had no cars, let alone computers and telephones and cell phones. Okay? Why are we still living under that ridiculous thing? But nothing's changed. We have 50 states. Nothing's changed because that minority is still the minority. That's the people with the money.
Mm.
And those are the people who are really making the decisions.
Right.
I mean, why is it that a country, a state like South Dakota, North Dakota, they got 2 senators and with a couple 100,000 people. New York and California got millions and millions of people, and they got 2 senators.
Right.
I mean, there should be 4. There should be more. Why is it congressmen, they get a 2-year term? You know how quick 2 years goes by? And the first thing that a congressman does once he's elected and once he goes to Washington, he's put in a room to start fundraising money for the next election.
That's true.
Yeah.
John Oliver had a great segment about that. We'll talk about the Constitution probably in our part 2 podcast, Ori, but I actually want to sort of bring this back to thinking about the economic part that you sort of brought up. Because right now, you know, Ron and I'll have conversations about this. Do we have a racial issue disguised as an economic issue? Is it an economic issue disguised as a racial issue? Is it what's happening here? What's the sort of like is this a problem of race and identity in America? Is a problem of economics? Where do you more lean when you kind of think about what's sort of dividing us right now?
Well, okay, unfortunately, the blacks fall in the category of the social part of it.
Right.
But everything falls under the economic part. Okay? I had a business in North Miami many, many years ago, in the 70s. And it was right after the Liberty City riots that I opened up. My financing company pulled away from Dade County. I didn't know what to do. I hired this young kid, who was a Cuban kid, who got to this country by fleeing first to Mexico and then to Florida. Nice kid, smart kid. I hired him as my manager. And one day we were driving around Miami, and near this big shopping center was where all the blacks lived. We drove down that street, and they were all outside on their doorsteps and so forth. And the Cuban guy says, "See that there? That's what our government wants. Our government gives them a welfare check, gives them food stamps. They don't want those people educated. They don't want them educated. Because education No matter if you're white, black, or green or yellow, education is the one thing that makes every one of us excel at what we want to do in life.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Reading. When you read between the lines. When you listen to the news, listen between the words they're saying and decipher the truth. I've been
Wisdom.
a reader all my life.
Mm-hmm.
And you can learn from it. You know, as a child growing up, people ask me if I got any regrets. Yeah, I do. I have one regret. I regret that my children and my grandchildren could not grow up knowing what and having what I had when I was a child. Because we had dinner every night at our dinner table. Us kids in the neighborhood, we got out, we played, we exercised, we played stickball, we played baseball, we ran around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
What are kids doing today? They're at their computer, they're playing games.
Yeah, on their phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or on their phone. Mm-hmm. And their parents will be right there doing something else. They don't care what their kids are doing. Mm-hmm. And if their kids ain't home for dinner, they don't care. It don't seem like a lot. It seems like easy. You're a family. Everybody should be there for family dinner every night.
Mm.
But, you know, these are the things. We don't have the essence of a family life in this country anymore.
Yeah. You know, Ori, it's interesting. You're bringing back memories. You know, when we were a kid in Philly, you know, our parents would be, you know, somebody be in the kitchen cooking, cooking, and dinner would be ready, and everybody within 30 minutes, everybody was in eating dinner, and if you wanted to go back out for a little while afterwards. But our entertainment was building go-karts and playing stickball and kickball and basketball, and there was no video games inside. You know, there was no cell phone.
None of that there. And you know what? You didn't have to worry. You never had to lock your doors. You never had to worry about being robbed.
Yep. You're 100% right.
You didn't have fires on the windows.
Yeah. And our neighbors, the parents of our they would parent our kids too. So if my neighbors saw me doing something I shouldn't be doing, damn sure enough, my mom would get a phone call. Somebody's get a phone call. If I wasn't getting this
about my age, huh? What are you about my age?
I'm 51.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm 51.
A young looking 51, folks. For those who are listening in.
Absolutely, yeah. No, we come from a similar generation. You know, I was talking to some younger comedians, you know, not too long ago about, you know, racism back then and racism today. You know, and I was trying to explain to them. I was like, you know, it's hard to put into words what people like Martin Luther King, what like my father, who was raised in Aiken, South Carolina, was going through when he was a kid in the 30s. He was born in the 40s. So 40s, 50s, 60s, what he was going through versus what we're going through now, they're not even comparable. Oh. And, you know, but we had community and we had a purpose and we had a bond. Now, you know, no one knows who their neighbors are in my neighborhood. I don't know who my neighbors are. You know, you
live here in California. Okay, so perhaps I lived out here for too long. But I laughed. I see friends of mine, their kids just had a baby. And, you know, when they bring that baby home, they have a nanny already.
Yeah.
They're being brought up by a nanny, not by the mother and father.
Right. No.
I mean, you know, I don't think we got that in so much as in other states as you got here in California, particularly Southern California.
I think statistically that's true. I think the numbers sort of show that, you know, families are different here in California than obviously somewhere else. Actually, speaking of the family thing and growing up, this is a good segue here. I had a question for you. You know, when it comes to identity, like racial identity, what did you see yourself as growing up? You know, for a lot of Black Americans, they clearly see that Black identity as part of their existence, where it's different for maybe Asian Americans, not as much. White Americans, it's very complex. What did you see yourself as growing up? Did you see yourself as American? Did you not think about it? Italian? What did you sort of see yourself as when it came to like identity growing up?
Well, it was definitely Italian because, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, and my mother cooked for, I lived in a duplex home, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles. And Italian is what they spoke at the table. And I never really learned it. I used to say, we're in America, speak English. And I get a swat.
Never stops.
You know what I mean? Being born and brought up in rural New York, as a child, I just knew somehow I wanted to get out of there. I didn't want to be there. I knew there was more to the world.
Interesting.
And I definitely didn't like cold weather.
Right.
No matter your background, no matter your identity, one thing that connects us together.
But, I used to read a lot of biographies of famous people at that time. And, how they emerged and, got out of there, where they come from and so forth. California was a place that I always wanted to come to. And by being in the military and then being stationed in Hawaii and being in warm weather, I didn't want the cold no more.
It had a taste of it. Not going back.
Yeah. I had the same thing. Let me ask you this. We've just had this election, and we all know how divided our country is. What do your opinion on how we got here, being so divided, and your opinion on how do we kind of move out of this? How do we become a more unified country?
Boy, that's a good question, and I think about that often.
You dropped a bomb on it.
The first thing, everything is one thing that the people have showed by getting out and massively voting this last, and the election was not rigged. Okay, they come up, and I got a lot of friends on both sides, and I'm a guy. I'm going to tell you the truth. If the truth hurts, too bad.
Right.
All right. A friend of mine called me up, and he says, "Ori, you're a gangster and you're a con man." He said, "Are you were?" He says, "Now, if you were given $1 billion, a billion, most people don't know what a billion is." He says, "How would you rig the election without getting caught?" And I thought about it, and I said, well, you got 50 states, and then you got 3,200 counties throughout the country. You got 3,200 counties where votes are being counted. So let's say that I select only 5% of those, 150 counties, that I got to get into and get it rigged. So now, in each county, in each voting place where they're voting, there's somebody in charge of that voting. So now, if I went to Stephen with a briefcase with $1 million, and I said, "I want you to make sure that these votes come out for so-and-so." And if Stephen were to take that $1 million and do it, all right, now he's got to get the people that are working under him to be able to do it. So what has transpired there? I went to Stephen, that's one person. Now Stephen's got to go to a couple more people, maybe 3, 4, 5, who knows how many. Somebody's going to talk.
Yep.
You're not going to get it done. It's totally impossible, in my opinion, as a gangster and a con man. I mean, if I had $1 billion to go out, I could not do it without getting caught. Not in today's world.
Right.
And, you know, it's just not going to happen. My mother used to be in Rome, New York. My mother worked at the polls and she counted votes. And my mother was a Democrat, but no way in the world was she going to take, oh, I'm going to put this over here. She'd never do that.
Mm-hmm.
These people don't do that. They're dedicated. They're real patriots. What can we do to possibly change? Ori Spado's philosophy is, number one, we should not have career politicians.
Mm-hmm.
I know one thing being a gangster. Follow the money.
Right on.
Yeah.
Follow the
Real
money.
talk.
Okay? And don't keep voting prosecutors in. You want you got all these ridiculous laws. I had more freaking freedom when I was in prison. I got here in Beverly Hills, California. They tell me I can't smoke in my fucking apartment. Yeah, Beverly Hills. No smoking in apartments.
But they did vote for dining outside. So you know what? Maybe all's not terrible.
Yeah.
And by the way, Ori, I'm not going to tell you where to smoke at all. You can smoke wherever you want to.
I know for those listening again, he's got a nice cigar.
They got signs in the hallway on every floor here.
Huh.
Okay? No smoking. My manager's nice. I smell smoke. Oh, well, it's not me, I said. I'm not the only one in the building to smoke.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, look at marijuana is legal in the state of California. You can't smoke in Beverly Hills. You know, you cannot buy cigarettes in Beverly Hills no more. You can't buy cigarettes, any tobacco products. They forbid that. How did they come in with these freaking laws? I got as much rights as a person who don't smoke. And I always was a courteous. If I was out at a restaurant and you know you were allowed to smoke there, I would always ask the people at the next table if it bothered them. And if it bothered them, I would not smoke. And you find out that very few people say it bothers them.
Mm.
I actually like the smell of cigarettes. I'm just gonna sort of like come clean about that. I went to college in New Hampshire. We had some great bars where people were just smoking. It was great. It was glorious. No, but like smoking's an allegory of the problems we're dealing with in this country. It's fine for you, but that smoke, the experts, and I know obviously we go back for the experts will say it kills other people. And so where do we draw that line?
Where do we draw that line? Well, I'll tell you what, I predict that sometime in the future, these experts are going to say it's not the secondhand smoke that's killing these people. Do you know that more people who never smoke get lung cancer than smokers? But now let's get back to that political thing and Ori's philosophy on it.
Yeah, please.
And I see that, I got to be honest, Ocasio-Cortez came out today thinking the same way I did. Okay?
Interesting.
I got to admit, she says it like it is. I wish I was a little younger because I'll tell you, I happen to like her. She's a little hottie.
It is a thing. It's a lot of people on the internet.
Huh?
Say that.
Or you like strong confidence and successful women. I love it.
Why do we got people that are 80 years old in there? Why don't we have more young people going out there running for office? Why? Right. Look I'm an older guy. I'm almost the age of some of them. Okay? Well, why? Do you think these career politicians are there for the $174,000 a year that they're paid? No, right. $174,000 sounds like a lot of money to most people. It's not to them.
Yeah.
All right. What goes into a bill? Why is a bill 1,800 pages long? Are you going to read that? Are you going to read that small print and see everything in that bill? Do you think that the Democrats don't talk to the Republicans and Republicans don't talk to the Democrats?
Yep.
Of course they do.
Yep.
The fighting you see is all bullshit. Okay? But when they're behind closed doors, okay, Steve, here's what we're going to do. Okay, you want $50 million to go to your state so you could build this museum. I need $50 million to go to my state over here for whatever, okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right? Now, the guy who's going to get the contract, now he's in charge of $50 million for his state. The money is going to go out to contractors and different people to build a museum, the same thing out here with the person who made the deal. Do you think out of that $50 million, a little bit of that ain't going to go into their pocket somehow?
Right.
Because that's the lobbyists. That's what they do. I would almost be willing to bet that 80% of our House of Representatives all got foreign bank accounts someplace. Follow the money.
Yeah.
And don't keep voting for prosecutors. You're going to end up in deep shit with more laws. Is that what you want? I got to be honest, I didn't like Joe Biden. I didn't like Joe Biden because he penned the worst crime bill in history. Put more blacks away than any individual in this country ever.
Yep.
Who voted for him? Who voted for him?
The black people did. African American
people.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll say this. All right, it's funny because like Ron and I have talked about the crime bill a bit, and I think that's like, to me, that's a whole conversation in itself. And I'd say, how about this? Or I want to get to some of these questions. We have some great questions for you. And I want to circle back to sort of like the more racial focused one because we're a racial focused podcast. For a lot of people growing up, you grew up seeing yourself as Italian, but you wanted to get away, go to California, be away. Did that identity ever transform for yourself? I mean, if you go back in Italian history, Italy wasn't really a thing until actually fairly recently. It was a series of regions that spoke Italian. It wasn't until, I believe, the end of the 19th century where one Italian political scientist said, I see myself as Italian. And it was because we all spoke a common language. And then soon later, Italians started to see themselves not as from Venice or Roma, but as Italians. Did you ever transform? Was there ever a transformation of like, I see myself as white, or I see myself as American, or I see myself as even something else? Did you ever have that transformation at all?
Well, it upsets me that, when they fill out a thing and they ask you your nationality, they don't give you a choice if you're Italian, Irish, Scottish, or whatever. You got to put white or black.
Right. Yep.
Or they say Caucasian.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, in all honesty, the Italians have a lot of black blood in them.
Yeah, sure do. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, Africa invaded the shit out of us.
Oh yeah, the more.
Yeah. Can we win a war? Like, like this is ridiculous. Like, what happened? We've really fallen since the Roman times. All right, continue.
Ori, I have a question for you. We're speaking about this. It just comes to me that you're a fixer, right? You fix things, and that means that you have dealt with probably some of the most challenging personalities with a lot of power that most people will never ever even imagine getting in touch with. What is your philosophy on diffusing tense situations? How do you bring people to the table to put aside their differences and to find common ground?
It's a great question.
Well, okay, good question. Let's say that I walk into a meeting and it's you two gentlemen. And you're Steve, right? Steve,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm excited.
And Steve gets upset and he gets a little bit cocky with me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which happens sometimes, all right?
All right.
Because he wants to show his strength. I'll look right at him. or I might put my arm around him and whisper in his ear. He will calm down. Trust me.
I gotta say, I'm like, Ron and I are trying to find ways to solve race relations. And when Ron asked you as a fixer what to do, I was a little too happy about hearing that answer. However, this does sound very nice. Put an arm around them and whisper in their ear. Anything particular you whisper in the ear?
That's such a power move. That's such a power move, by the way. Go ahead.
It is. No, it is. I was. It really is. Like human contact.
What I say, it's not, I'm not saying I love you. You can trust that.
Right.
So some superlatives relating to.
So what you're doing? So what you're doing is you're leaning into these people. Respectfully.
I try to handle no matter what level somebody's on. I try to talk to people on their level and never above them. But sometimes you have to use intimidation or fear. Sometimes it needs to be used. You might not have to do it, but if you say it in the proper way, they get the message quick.
Right.
So if Ron's ever giving me crap, I just have to threaten him a little bit, and eventually, Ron, you'll roll over, right? You'll be toast.
I don't know if "roll over" is exactly the good phrase, but what I am getting from this is that you're. What did Teddy Roosevelt say? Walk softly, speak softly, but carry a big stick.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing. You're leaning in and saying, "Hey, listen, I understand you're a little heated right now, but you may want to look at it in a different perspective before things go too far."
It suits in my right hand. Yeah.
I don't have to say that. When I whisper it in their ear, trust me, it's not what I say.
Leaving up to the imagination. No, I don't want to hear anymore. I want the audience to wonder.
Use your imagination. I'll give you an example. Let's take this there, for example.
I will put you down, motherfucker.
All right? Because I happen to know more. I don't know why people love to call me and give me information, and thank God that they do, but it's just been a custom, no matter if I'm here, Florida, New York, or wherever I'm at. But, being from New York, and even though I lived out here, I used to travel to New York once a month. I maintained a place there. And we smoking a vape.
Yeah, I got my CBD pen.
Oh,
it's,
okay.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
You shilled your book, Social CBD. They are excellent at what they do. Highly recommended. All right, I'm done. Back to
Okay. So, what was I saying? Okay. You have, I'll just name two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Two guys who hated Donald Trump intensely. Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz.
Right. Yeah.
And now they're both up his butt. Oh, okay.
Love him.
Oh.
Okay.
They rolled over for you, might say.
After you told me my father was a killer and the nasty thing, you think I'm going to forget about that?
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think happened? And it's just not those two that it happened to. You know what being compromised means? Now, you're going to compromise somebody in two different ways. Number one, you're going to have certain information solid that you won't disclose if they comply with what you want them to do. Now, some people might object to that. So what's the next step? Instilling fear. And I remember many years ago in New York, a couple designers did a job. Overcharged the guy, didn't do the job right. The guy happened to be a friend. And these designers, they had a nice, beautiful apartment in a high rise on Park Avenue. And we had to go visit them. and we wanted the money.
Right.
Well, these two partners, they were in love with each other. Okay? So when you tie one of them over the fucking railing with a rope, and you tell the other one, you're going to the bank and get the fucking money right now, what do you think is going to happen? Is that fear?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He couldn't get to the bank quick enough to get back with the money.
Right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's fear.
Yeah.
And I happen to know more. I cannot discuss it who,
Surely,
why,
yeah.
or how.
No, we as you wouldn't explain what you said when you whisper to people. I think right now our imagination's starting to create some form to what's going on with this.
Hey, Stephen, real quick, I want to do a time check. How much time do we have?
Actually, yeah, real quick. So, Ori, I got obviously a few more questions on my list. I want to respect your time. You got what, maybe 20 more minutes before you got to go? Something like that? Less?
Perfect. Yeah.
No. Mm-hmm. So how would a gangster approach race? The reason why I bring it up is that, you always hear like, Italians had their gang, Winter Hill, that was a lot of Irish guys, black people. Their gangs really aren't, for Hispanic Americans, they aren't very multiracial. People usually stick to their own. Was that just sort of like an understood thing that's part of the gangster world? Or like or maybe I'm wrong about it.
That's all changed today. I mean, one of my next books is going to be about the underbelly of Los Angeles. And, if you read my book, you know some of the people that I knew. Suge Knight was a good friend of mine.
Right.
As well as Jimmy Henchman and Haitian Jack until I found out he was an informant.
Oh, shit.
So, things like that there. So I know the underbelly of Los Angeles. I've known a lot of guys in the Crips, the Bloods, and, I respected them. They respect me.
Right.
Okay. By doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Bosses, whether it's a gang, whether it's the Italian, whether it's the Irish, bosses are not stupid people. They're intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard it many times that they could run General Motors or a big corporation. Yes, they could. But the money's better at what they're doing.
Follow the money, right?
Follow the money. Understand money. People don't understand money. Why do you think some people are broke and others aren't? You take two people who make the same amount of money. One's broke, the other's not.
Yeah.
My mother was a saver. She taught my younger brother to save money. She tried teaching me. And I made more money than everybody in my family combined. And I lost it all because I thought it was so freaking easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking making a lot of money, hundreds of thousands, $1 million here. Okay? Fast money goes fast. Along with the woman, the fast cars, and everything else. And it's fun for a while.
It's going to that crime thing. It's interesting why some people get into crime and some don't after hearing you talk about a lot of the stuff. And I had a question here, because like thinking about crime, so I'll talk about policing these days. Black Lives Matter. And like, where do you stand in this? Because, you talk about how discrimination led many Italian Americans to have to form gangs to a certain degree. Conversely, obviously you're like, I don't want people to go into this life. That's kind of sort of like the message that you have with your book. What's just sort of your feelings on this?
The life that I was involved with,
right,
is not the life that it used to be. All right, it all changed. Basically, when did it change? You got to remember, we were a secret society. What happened in the shadows stayed in the shadows. Of course, people on the street knew who we are. People of our own knew who we were.
Right.
All right, but it was never said. The thing that destroyed it, basically, in my opinion, was the movie The Godfather. It made it glamorous, made it a life that everybody wanted to be part of, wanted to know these guys. And a lot of these guys, boy, they wanted to, and they ended up, some of them ended up in their life. But the moment the cuffs went on them, what happened? Yeah, what do you want to know?
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Start talking.
And that was the ruination of it.
What advice do you have to anybody who's listening? You know, people who are listening right now, that may, you know, I call them subconscious racists, people who have these biases. You know, they have bias, they have racial bias, but they don't recognize it for what it is. You know, and there's this big push for equality now and all that good stuff. How do we communicate with these people to let them know that, you know, that these inequalities exist and, you know, that it negatively affects everybody?
Some people you're not going to change. You know, you're not going to change some people in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and states like that there. You're not going to change their mind. They are still fighting the Civil War.
Right.
Now, I do not believe in defunding the police.
Neither do I, right?
That's set against that there.
We should reform the police, right?
Reform is, defund the police is stupid. It's just a horrible slogan. That's all it is. Not realistic.
And, you know, and those people who want to defund it, the moment something happened and they can't dial 911 and get a police officer there, what are they going to do? Huh?
Call you.
Yeah.
It's a fear-based society. You know,
They
we
call
lock
me,
our doors.
they call me, they better, look at if they
Cops show
call
up
me,
and start shooting.
they better have an envelope for me. With
No
cash.
questions asked. I'm not going to ask any more questions on that. There's no follow-up.
You landed that one.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting because, you know, how I want to bring it to race relations, and then I want you to plug your book, and then I want you to sort of give us something inspirational to think about. You know, for a lot of these racial issues that we're dealing with, when we can't put an arm around somebody and speak into their ear, what other things can we do to work through some of these divisions? Because you've seen people be ruthless with each other. Now, you know, people start whining if you don't use the right term with them and stuff like that. And some of that I understand, I'm going to be sensitive, but what are the things we can do to sort of like find that reconciliation when the stick's not working? What's that carrot?
No, unfortunately, it's getting worse.
Yeah.
That's why we're doing this. Like, you know, someone's got to stand up against it.
It's not getting better. And that's a terrible thing. You know, I know here in Hollywood, they're doing what they can, different, you know. There's such a vast difference of people in this country, and both sides going overboard, and who wants more and who deserves more. I give that question a lot of thought, and I got to be honest with you, my friend. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm afraid of it.
Interesting.
I'm afraid of it. All right, I'm afraid of what's going on in this country, what's going to happen in this country, and I'm definitely afraid. I don't know what is going to happen, but you know, they're tearing down statues and all the things they're doing. They're tearing down our history. You go to Italy, you go to France, you see buildings that are thousands of years old, and they keep them up. They keep their history there, so the kids know what the history is. Mm-hmm. Today, ask a kid about World War II. What? Right. They don't know about World War II.
Right.
Ask them who Elvis Presley was. They don't know Elvis Presley. I mean, our education sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you hear it all the time. And the kids who do get education, then they get put in debt by student loans. You know, how are you going to fix that?
Yeah.
When you're in debt, you're owned. There's a lot of people owned. So Ron, please jump in. That was a bit of a tangent.
Well, thank you, Stephen Wallace. He just said something that keyed me. You were mentioning earlier how the youth today were they're in their cell phone, they're disconnected from society at large, they're uninformed. We're back to education being second or third rate in this country. And this will be my final question. Just to bring it all together, we have the president that's leaving now. He's obviously he's not an honest person. I know in organized crime and in the streets of Philadelphia where I came up, and this, the crime families in South America that I've met, honor, respect, and integrity. Those are the foundations. It doesn't matter what you believe. It matters who you are. Could you speak to that a little bit, and what your opinions are on where we're at with honor, respect, and integrity?
Well, what everybody should learn, that we're all on this earth. We are all brothers and sisters, okay? No matter what the color of our skin, we should all be getting along. We should respect each other. And if the person is your friend, be loyal, be respectful. Respect your elders. But for all you parents out there, I honestly don't blame the children. I blame the parents, because the parents are not teaching this. You got to remember, when I grew up, we didn't have a car. It was not until 1955, when I was 11 years old, that my father bought his first car, and it was a 1955 Buick. But up until that time, my father was picked every morning up by a co-worker and brought up. And they paid cash for that car. They paid through war bonds that they saved. Today, that's not enough for people. They want more and more. I remember in those days that I grew up, if you saw one car in somebody's driveway, that was a lot. But then I started seeing 2 cars. The women started going out working. And then before you know it, now you drive by home, you see 4 or 5 cars. They got 2 children, each child's got a car. I mean, let them work for it. Let them know the real meaning of a dollar. How to get it legally, not illegally. If you watch my videos, I'm doing one a week that I release on Sunday that began last week. It's called A Day in the Life. I want to show these young men and women that what they see when they watch these movies, it's not a glamorous life. You better be smart. You better know everything that's going on around you. You better be able to, when you wake up in the morning until you go to bed, all right, you walk into a restaurant, you better know who everyone is at every table. When you walk down the street, know and think maybe there's somebody behind a tree. All right, you got to watch for law enforcement following you, okay, daily. You got to do that. Not many people can do that today without getting caught.
Yeah.
It's not a life for the young. It's not a life for anybody. You don't want to live that life. Get a job, get a trade, get an education. There's a lot of things that people could do. But everybody wants the fast dollar. They want what their neighbor has. You could get what your neighbor has, but work for it. You know, living here in Hollywood, you know, the people in the Midwest, they see you become known as a big comedian tomorrow, they're going to say an overnight success.
Right.
They don't know all the goddamn years that you sweated, you didn't eat, okay? You didn't know where you were going to sleep. Am I right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's been rough. Man.
They don't know that. They don't know the work that these young actors and actresses go through. I used to chase people out of this town. Okay, there was groups and groups of people promising people acting jobs, comedian jobs. $500 for we'll take the pictures. All right. And these young kids, I mean, they were giving blood to get a dinner that evening, and they would find $500 in the hope that person they were all scams. I can remember walking in the offices on Sunset and Hollywood Boulevard and telling those guys, when I leave here, that door is shut. You guys are packing up and get out of this town. I don't want you here. You don't take advantage of these people.
Wow.
And there are people taking advantage of them.
Yeah, every day. Every day. Yeah.
Because people want to believe. And then what happens? You get burned. And then you try it again. You get burned again. It happens. But we got to keep going. Be strong. Read. Stay positive. But always be respectful. Be loyal to the ones you love. And on that note, folks,
Stephen, you want to?
Pleasure.
It really has been a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, be loyal to the ones you love. I want to sort of, I want to wrap up this whole podcast and say that, you know, Ori's been forgiven, you know, for in many ways, and he asked for forgiveness for the stuff he's done wrong, and we've all done wrong stuff. And if you listen to Ori, he talks very glowingly about the good stuff. We had this entire podcast, and, you know, he's known for being the gangster stuff. It's the good things, though, that we care about. And it doesn't matter who you are, what your background was. If you're doing good stuff, that's the way out. That's what we want society to remember you for. And being an honest person, as you say.
Unfortunately, society's only going to remember gangster for the bad things they did.
Right.
They don't realize we got big hearts and all the things that we've done for people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's terrible.
Yeah.
What's going on in this country, and it sickens me.
Right. You know, Ori, you mentioned a good point, and I'll finish with this. The reason why I brought up earlier, you know, how organized crime actually was there to protect, and you expanded on what was going on in Italy at the time, is because that's what community is about, and that's what family is about, and that's what trying to make sure that everybody, as you hear politicians always say as a tagline, you know, have a fair shot. And when you have communities where the women are being raped and beaten, and where you have the men being disenfranchised and not being given the opportunity to excel, that's happened in both Black, Italian, and so many different communities, you can see where these negative things came out. But like Ori was just saying, you don't focus on the good that a lot of these people did. And there's always a positive and negative to anything that happens. And so if anybody who's listening, you know, for me, I think if you can take anything from this, is exactly what he's been talking with, Ori's been mentioning, which is being engaged in your community, being a good person, understanding that the glorification of violence and crime isn't a good thing. And that what you see on TV is exactly that. It's what you see on TV. It's not real. And Ori, I am just extraordinarily happy to have had this conversation with you, and I'd love to have you back to talk about the podcast that you're putting out on Sundays as well, or the videos that you're putting out on Sundays, because that sounds
actually a great time for please plug us some of your stuff before you go.
Yeah, and you can see these videos that I do on my Instagram, Facebook, and my YouTube station, The Accidental Gangster.
The Accidental Gangster,
The Accidental Gangster on YouTube. My son will be posting them every Sunday.
Right on. And folks, if you haven't got the book, it is I got it in yesterday, so I've only been able to skim through it. It's extraordinarily. It's just an extraordinary book.
Which book did you get? What book did you didn't get this one, right?
No, I got the old version.
You got the old one.
Yeah, I got the new version. So
you got the original, quickly, all right? Ron only gets the original retro, the one with spirit and soul. None of these.
So there's two versions, ladies and gentlemen. If you go on Amazon, but you know what, Amazon makes enough money. Go to his website, accidentalgangster.com, and get yourself an autographed version, because I'm probably going to do that because I want an autographed version. I
want in on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Ori, if you have any final thoughts.
You guys buy the book and come on over, I'll autograph for you.
You got a deal.
Sounds good. We're holding you to that, all right?
Any final thoughts,
Ori? Buy the new book. It's on Amazon.
There you go.
I'll autograph for you guys. Listen, I love you guys. Let's do this maybe in January.
I would love to.
I'm happy to do another one. Mm-hmm. All right. In the meantime, have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and all my love to everybody.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Ori.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Ori, to all you and your family. Thank you so much again for spending the time with us.
My pleasure, gentlemen.
Take it easy, buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Have a good day.
Take care.
All right.
All right, folks. This is another episode of the Positive Identity Podcast with Ori Spado. Ron, in 3 words or less, how'd you feel about that?
Blown away.
Fantastic. On that note, Ron, it was a pleasure. We'll see you all soon.
Absolutely. You guys have a great day, everybody. Happy holidays.